Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan AGAJANIan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are director Emmanuel Deleage and artist Yvette Gellis. Executive director of Casa 0101, Casa 0101 Theater in Boyle Heights, Emmanuel Deleage was born and raised in Paris. He graduated from UCLA with a Bachelor of Arts emphasizing world arts and cultures. He's worked with some of the greats in the theater world, and we'll talk about that with him and his association to Gino Zampieri, Armand Gatti, and my friend, the genius Peter Sellers. You've worked with Peter, haven't you?
Well, yeah, I first met Peter when I was a student at UCLA. I took 2 of his courses there, and they were just amazing. They were amazing courses because he really goes beyond trying to teach you something, and he really wants, you know, everyone to become enlightened, thoughtful, conscious human beings, and it's just a wonderful class that doesn't feel like a class, to be frank with you.
How do you teach that? I know he's so loose. I ran into him on the street in Culver City, and he came running over to the car. I was at a stoplight. He said, "Oh, my friend, how are you?" And I was on the way downtown. But he's so genuine. How do you teach that?
You know, I think what I get from Peter is just be very present, very present to the person you're speaking with in the moment. I don't think it's something you could teach, but he, like you said, he's infectious in the sense that his generosity just beams out, and people around him aspire to do their best, you know.
So the students felt, as a student, you felt like you had to give everything.
Yes, yeah.
And with Zampieri, tell us who that is.
So Gino Zampieri is an Italian-born director who worked both in France and is now the director of 2 theaters in Switzerland, actually. And Gino directed a play that I produced called Public Song Before 2 Electric Chairs at the LA Theater Center.
Ooh, wow, great title. Who wrote it?
It was Armand Gatti.
Oh, that's how you worked with the 2 of them?
Yes, exactly. And Armand Gatti, it was a play about the Sacco Vanzetti affair, which happened in the United States from 1920 to 1927. It was basically 2 Italian immigrants who got put to death for a crime they didn't commit, and they later got exonerated.
Oh, so that's why the 2 of them were interested in it, Gatti?
Yeah, I had yes, because it was Gatti is also, his origins are Italian, and Italy at the turn of the last century was a poor country, and a lot of immigrants, and going to France, going to the United States, and Gatti's own father, Auguste Gatti, first immigrated to the United States, to Chicago. And so Sacco Vanzetti in the early 1910s moved to the United States also from Italy, and they then got arrested. They protested the First World War, and they got, you know, arrested and scapegoated, and so Gatti felt this was a story that his father had told him about, and it was a story that he felt he had to tell. And Gino Zampieri, also being an Italian immigrant and having moved to France, was in that production back in 1966, and so when we did it in 2001, Gatti said, "Why doesn't Gino come and direct it?" And I would be wonderful. Right. I mean, he was just a teenager in 1966. He was 19 years old, I believe. Gino was, and so he came back and directed it in 2001, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
So was Casa 0101 founded at that time? Did you have a space?
Casa was founded, but it was our smaller venue. So it was a very small 1,000 square foot venue, and we couldn't host such a big play in that small venue.
And then before you got to Casa 0101, you spent time, 5 years, in fact, with the LA Poverty Department Theater troupe.
Yes. Now, the LA Poverty Department was a group founded by John Malpede, which does sort of theater work in Skid Row with formerly homeless people.
How did you work with them?
Well, same thing. I met John at UCLA as well, and then he was doing some workshops, and he was telling his students about it, and I decided it was a program called Change Exchange about young people from UCLA going over to Skid Row and working there for some sort of clinic, a theater clinic, and that's how I got involved, and I loved the experience, and asked John if I could kind of stay on, hang around, and he said sure, and he hired me a little bit later on staff there.
Did working with the homeless, were they interested in that theater group?
Oh, well, very much, because there's few opportunities to express yourselves creatively, and so it was a positive outlet. I mean, some of them obviously had different challenges, and there's obviously the shelter and the food challenges that makes it sometimes hard. But those who many people really enjoyed it, and the company's been going strong for 25 years. So.
Oh, it's been going that long. Well, you stepped out and you founded Casa 0101. Why did you do that, and how?
Well, my wife, just to be clear, my wife founded Casa 0101 in 2000, just before I met her. I met her in 2001, and she had a space, I had a nonprofit, and we basically merged the two together in 2001.
And where was it?
So Casa 0101 is in Boyle Heights, on First Street in Boyle Heights.
Oh, on First Street?
Yes.
First Street on what?
Well, we now opened a second location, which is on the corner of St. Louis and First Street, right across from the Hollenbeck Police Station.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's pretty safe for us to come and visit, right?
Yes, absolutely. But it's a beautiful new venue that's 5,400 square feet. We have an art gallery, we've got a classroom, we've got a state-of-the-art 99-seat theater.
How did you build that? I know it's a state-of-the-art theater, and the stage is big, and this art gallery, all these components are so great. How did you build the space out?
Well, frankly, we didn't know what we got ourselves into when we started the project, and what we thought was it was a former First Street boxing studios.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous.
And then when we walked in, we thought, oh, well, maybe $100,000, 6 months of of renovation works would do it. Little did we know that all the zoning and permits and red tape we had to go through, and it took 3.5 years to raise the money and to get through the permit process to
It's interesting. I'm just reading this. Mickey Cohen, the gangster, who also was a fighter, and he used to work out in East LA, and he used to fight in that area, and they were training probably in this space that you were talking about. It must have been a famous training area in East LA.
Yeah, no, and I heard that I know Muhammad Ali's daughter, I understood, trained
Did she work there too?
and I think Rocky V, some of the scenes were filmed there as well. So yes.
So, what does the name mean?
So Casa 0101. So. Casa means home in Spanish, and 0101, so the story is that zeros and ones are the language of computers, right? It's the binary code that computers, it's either zeros for yes and ones for no's. And it was right around the time that digital cameras were becoming available, and so the idea was that it would be home of the digital revolution. So that was kind of the idea in the beginning. And now we offer digital video classes, but it's really become a theater. But the name stuck, so we kept it.
And then why did you put in an art gallery? I think that's brilliant, and because people are waiting to go to the theater, and they never have anything to do.
Well, yeah, absolutely. and we want to embrace all the arts, not just theater. And we thought having an art gallery could complement the show that's on the stage.
You talked about your wife being involved in it. Your wife is Josefina Lopez. And how did she become involved?
Well, Josefina was raised in Boyle Heights. She moved from Mexico at the age of 5 and was raised just a few blocks from the theater. And she wrote several plays, one called Simply Maria, or The American Dream, another one called Real Women Have Curves, and especially that second one that was turned into a movie later on by HBO, and obviously brought her success. She got her master's at UCLA in screenwriting, and she always wanted to give back to her community. So that's why she came back to Boyle Heights to open this Center for the Arts.
Did she open the small storefront first?
Yes,
was that it?
Yes.
Because I was going to say, how do you get somebody of her stature involved in your Casa 0101?
Well, I think it's the other way around. It was her Casa 0101, and she got me involved in it.
Because I was like reading the notes, and I was going like, how did he get Josefina to come in? And you've directed her plays as well.
Yes, I've directed Simply Maria. I've directed another play called Food for the Dead, and Yeah, she's a wonderful playwright, and in fact, if I can make a shameless plug,
Please.
right now on June the 8th, we're going to be presenting a world premiere called Trio Los Machos by Josefina, and it's a play about the Bracero program, about 3 immigrants coming over to the United States to work in the agricultural fields, but they get out of that by singing the songs of Trio Los Panchos.
And is Trio Los Panchos a real group?
Oh, absolutely. I would say it's perhaps one of the most famous Mexican groups of all time.
And they say we sing because we can't cry.
Absolutely.
That's part of what they say.
Exactly, because men are not supposed to cry, so they sing because they're not allowed to cry, and so they could express themselves, their pain, through singing.
So does Los Ranchos continue?
Los Panchos?
Los Panchos, I'm sorry.
Well, they were a group that was around, interestingly enough, from 1943 to 1964, which was pretty much the same era of the Bracero program.
Oh, I see.
Now, the Bracero program started in World War II when a lot of American service members were overseas. They had to import labor from Mexico, and so a lot of people came during this guest worker program. And my wife's father first came to the United States during that time.
Was it basically Northern California, or was it here in the Valley?
I believe it was all over.
It was all
over the United States that they needed people in the factories as well as in the fields to do agricultural work.
You're executive director of CASA.
Yes.
So can you pick yourself to direct? Is that what you do? Do you pick other directors to come in?
No. It's too much work for me. I did direct a play this year, but it's too much work for me to be executive director and direct plays at the same time. No, Josefina is the artistic director, and so she'll, when we have a little team, we've got a wonderful board president called Eddie Padilla, and it's really the 3 of us who kind of talk about the season. I mean, Josefina on the artistic side takes the lead, but we all sort of meet in a committee and discuss that.
Eddie Padilla is directing this play.
And he's directing this play, yes, absolutely.
I see. So how was he involved in it? Did he know the subject matter as well?
Well, Eddie is a multi-talented person. I don't even want to call him a director because he's an actor and a singer himself. And he met us. Josefina and I actually went to France for a year in 2005, 2006, and he took over the reins of CASA during that interim period.
Oh, so he's very familiar.
So he's familiar with Josefina's work, and because he's such a wonderful singer, a wonderful actor, wonderful director, we thought it would be great for him to direct this play where music is so important.
So, do they sing in the play?
They absolutely sing in the play.
Who sings? Where'd you get your cast?
Well, we had to do auditions, and believe it or not, I mean, there's so many talented actors and singers in East LA and Latino singers in LA, and so we have 6 men singing, 3 of them when they're young. And 3 of them when they're old.
Great.
And they
play instruments too?
And they play the guitars, yeah. And no, it's a wonderfully entertaining and truthful story. And it's the experience of many Mexican migrants.
I say Boyle Heights. It's not really so hard to get to. It's on the other side of Mocha. It's downtown, right?
That's
you
correct.
have to put your mind at where it is.
It's just a mile from Little Tokyo.
So that's easy. And it's safe, right?
It is safe. I mean, it is safe. Like any other place in Los Angeles, it's a big city, but no, it's a safe neighborhood, and we're just across from the Hollenbeck police station. And I've never had any problems, and I've been there 12 years. So
I'm so happy you came on and told us about it. Thank you so much.
And if I could just invite audiences to Trio Los Machos, which runs June 8th through July 8th at Casa 0101.
And tell us what's next.
And what's next is a play called Lorca in a Green Dress by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Nilo Cruz, and that's playing from July 20th to August 26th.
Nilo Cruz is fabulous. We've had him on the show. I've seen his shows in New York, and he's fantastic. Will he be here for this?
He will absolutely be here.
We'll have to come and see it.
And if I can invite people to check out our website at www.casa0101.org for information and how to get tickets and so on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And don't go away, and don't you go away. I don't want him to go away either. Yvette Gellis will be on, the artist. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with artist Yvette Gellis, who was born and raised in Chicago and earned a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Illinois in DeKalb. She went to UCLA, Art Center in Pasadena. She studied at the École des Beaux-Arts. She also studied at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. She received an MFA from Claremont Graduate University. And as far as I can tell, Yvette, you've been very strong in the arts forever. When did you decide to have art as a career?
Well, I think it was always sort of, I was born with the idea. So probably my first memory as a child was painting, drawing,
is that
creating,
right?
Yeah.
So then you just continued. You went to so many schools. How much did you learn at each place? It's great.
Well, maybe it was just my way of getting out of Chicago.
Oh.
Nothing against Chicago. I love the town.
It's a very artsy town. I love
fantastic.
Chicago. Yeah, it's really great.
It's a great place to be born and raised. Just getting across the street in the winter requires a lot of willpower. So
that's a different thing, right?
I remember walking across the river in Chicago and just holding on for dear life. I thought I would blow away, but so there was something about willpower. I think that drive, ambition, that working hard that came from growing up in that part of
Do you decide to be a painter? Do you decide to be a sculptor? How does it come to you?
Well, I think, it's a process. There are certain things that you fall in love with, I think, in the young years, when you're a child. You have certain skills you get attention for. You can draw, you can, paint well, you figure out how to manipulate the materials in a way that produces, excellent work. So you're getting rewarded for this. I think as any human being, in the younger years, they're getting rewarded for certain things that they tend to excel at. So I was naturally excelling in a lot of those skills. So
how did you pick the kind of materials you wanted to work with?
When I was, I think, 14 years old, my mother was an art teacher. And we went to Europe, and we went around to all the different museums in Europe, right? And I remember just looking at all the paintings, and I was just naturally drawn. And I'd look very closely how they were manipulating the material and painting. And I always thought, oh, I know how to do that. I know how to do that. But you see, it's not really about that anymore. I realized that all that training was really about advancing that conversation around painting today. It's not so much about what you're producing. It's really about the questions you're asking and how important those questions are about the work. How provocative are those questions? And that's sometimes kind of difficult to do with painting because it was, unpopular, and then it became very popular. Now everyone's painting again.
But that's the thing that I think if you're a good painter, your work is always going to be good. If you're a good sculptor, your work is always going to be good. And it's hard, and I know there are trends, and I know you have to ask yourself these things, but it's hard to always be inspired because you have all this outside stuff coming into you. You're in the studio alone, you're there alone, right?
It is not easy to walk into your studio.
Right.
And, the majority of the time, it's, kind of mind-boggling.
But one of the things you said was you have to think about all these other things that are going on. How do you, and ask the hard questions. And when you ask the hard questions, how do you get those onto the canvas?
Well, I kind of like to describe it as there are different windows. If you imagine you're in a house, right? And there's all these different windows, and you open certain windows. It's kind of a visual way of looking at how the mind is working. But those windows, in a way, represent different areas of thinking. So let's say one window is like, all the historical precedents that were before us, that came, that we have to consider what has been done, right? And then, of course, that's one area. The other is, your natural inclinations and what strikes you, visually. How am I seeing my everyday world, and how am I interpreting it? What is my contribution to that today? So you kind of have so many experiences, it kind of brings you up to a certain time.
And then you have to put it on canvas. That's what I'm getting at, because you talk about you have to consider the conflict and the balance that you just brought up.
Well, you know, it's funny, Joan. There are days when I just, you know, in a way, I just have to close every one of those windows and stop thinking altogether because it's too much thinking, and there is, you know, it prevents you from doing. So you just have to start doing it. But I have found that that if you work within a certain structure or system, and you see, you know, when I wander a lot and I use a camera and I take a lot of pictures.
That's what I was going to ask, how the process starts. So there is the beginning of the process, other than all your background information that's been fed into you. So you use a camera.
Yes, exactly.
It's true. So you start. So you have a camera. That's the beginning of the process, or you just are getting more.
Tool,
you're getting
camera.
more information.
Yeah. Well, the camera is so marvelous. Digital, you can just capture how you're thinking. And I do that often, and then I have to sift through all those images and figure out, oh, you know, and it reveals myself to myself, is basically what it does.
So what do you consider a conflict, and how do you balance it when you're looking at a painting?
Well,
or working on a painting?
This is like opening another window
Okay.
in the house. So,
right.
so this gets into really an interior life and sort of philosophically. I see life as you know, these opposing forces coming at us all the time, and we're being hit always on every level, physically, spiritually, mentally, intellectually. We are always being challenged. There's this wonderful beauty, there's this the great things about living life, and we're always bombarded. I don't know if you've ever experienced when everything's going great and then all of a sudden, wham, you're hit.
There's always something thrown into it.
Right, and even in the littlest way to the biggest tragedy.
Right.
Always. And if you look at our world, it's very much that way. It's very insecure, and we're living in such a time where things are falling apart. You know, some of my paintings are slowly revealing this idea of being blown apart, dissolving, the ephemera, that nothing's permanent, that it's moving in and out. So I'm looking at the meanings here. I'm asking the questions.
So that's an interesting thing, because Breaking Point, which is one of your paintings, is exterior. Does that have those questions involved in it?
Yes, I think there are multiple dualities, if you will, happening. So
in Breaking Point, then you have Breaking Point, the interior.
Yes.
And is that, how does that?
Well, one is it's looking at an urban space specifically.
The exterior, yes.
And then seeing it internally. It's almost as if the space itself within it contains history and memory. And within that space, you start going deeper and deeper and deeper.
Because there's layers now. We're talking about layers.
And within that space is like finding the meaning. So it's kind of like you start, you know, asking these questions. And, you know, as I was saying, you know, you're trying to find answers.
Tell us a little bit about Urban Jungle.
Urban Jungle was, again, originally from photographs of mine, but then it became a combination. There's actually no photograph of that image, but it became a combination of my work, paintings within the studio, reflecting into also different buildings. And it really was, you know, emblematic in a way of the Americans' economic cycle of rebirth, growth, decline. And it's a space that is really, you know, falling apart with these floating, somewhat modern-esque, you know, images within it. That are sometimes meaningless and sometimes meaningful. So, but the space is like a lost space where something, this life force that was there at one time is dispersed.
It's still
gone.
dispersed.
And I did have this experience as a child where a beautiful home in terms of the land around it was just bulldozed down into a homogeneous housing development.
Yeah, I see what
Like
you're saying.
attract housing development.
Exactly.
And there were all the ponds, the orchards, the woods,
I
and they
see.
disappeared, and it left such a sense of loss.
I think that brought everything together that we've been talking about. I think that one thing that you're saying, that you just said about the house being bulldozed. One of your really big paintings, Aqua, it's, you did it with...
Aqueous igneous.
Say
yes.
it, okay, Aqueous Igneous.
Yes.
And it was outside at the 18th Street Arts?
No, actually it was within their project gallery.
Oh, it was inside.
And I took over the entire gallery. So as soon as you walked in, the painting was in the back of the gallery. And what I did is I basically made an IMAX painting in 3D.
Oh, fabulous.
So the painting is 14 feet by about 9 feet, and I built a platform. So you walked up and into the space of the painting, and all of the elements in the painting, the shapes, the color, that all have these psychological aspects to them, were all brought into the space so that the viewer was now experiencing it
They were
in
like
the three
within?
dimension.
Oh, fantastic.
So from every angle, you actually walked into the painting, which is, again, it's like opening another window. I have a love of the space and California space and light artists.
Oh,
and
yes.
even though they've gotten rid of the mark, the painted mark, the hand, Terrell and Irwin and Larry Bell, who I love his work, this light. The light is in a way, the paintbrush, and the viewer is able to experience the work physically. And there's something somewhat theatrical about that as soon as this
Exactly,
engagement is
yeah.
happening. But I am committed to this mark, so this is my way of trying to advance this conversation. I say trying.
You are showing...
Advance the conversation, but...
You're showing the light, but you're doing it in painting. They're showing the light and doing it with glass and
Yes.
mirrors and whatever else they use, other
Or
than
even
a
the
paintbrush.
sun, the sun itself.
Terrell
Yeah.
using it
Oh,
in those
it's so
open
incredible.
buildings where the
Yeah.
light goes through.
And-
Well, you've been enlightening to us today. Thanks, Yvette.
No, thank you, Joan. Really,
Thank you, and thank you
pleased
for
to be
watching
here.
us today. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017, and email me because those are the easiest, jaquinn1@aol.com. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.